So tell me, what made you interested in running for public office?
So I actually have had civic engagement in my blood since a very young age. Actually, 6 weeks after my 18th birthday, I ran for office in the very first election I could even vote in. And I ran for county committee in New Jersey, and I won. And then I was reelected twice. So I was really fortunate back then to have some very strong mentors that were a lot more experienced than I was.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 18. So I, worked a lot at the county level, and always kind of had that in my my soul, something that I want to bring back to the community. And I consider myself a good listener. When I see that there are problems, I'm always eager to find solutions.
So tell me, what is your platform? Tell me some of the issues on your platform, your campaign platform.
So I have a number of issues on my platform that are really, I think, very important to the community. One is education. I believe very passionately in arts education. I think that helps kids self-regulate and also gives them just skill and openness to the arts. I strongly believe in social emotional learning. I think social emotional learning, empathy building, promoting kindness among the younger students, this is the most promising practice, and we know this from research and evidence-based practices. This is the most promising step forward in prevention. And by prevention, I mean violence prevention, bullying prevention, and also health promotion for kids. Their wellness increases, teacher turnover lessens, grade point averages improve when schools go through this kind of transformation, and it really just overall improves school climate. So that's one of the issues that I want to work on. Another is, of course, the environment, addressing climate change, but also looking at how to promote community resilience. I mentioned earlier there are storms now that we're seeing that are more severe than we've ever seen before.
For instance, Ellicott City.
Ellicott City. I mean, the wastewater drainage issue is a huge concern, but also the hurricanes that we're seeing that are affecting communities. I mean, look at what happened in Puerto Rico, right? Now, just this week, we learned that there were many more people killed, over 5,000 people killed during the course of that storm and the aftermath. So we, as community, become each other's first responders. When you have a storm like that and the roads are impassable, we become each other's first responders. That means that knowing your neighbors is really important. And I think when we talk about disaster preparedness and emergency response, we're often thinking about how do we get supplies out, how do we deal with injuries and things like that, but we don't think about resilience and building those community connections. And also factoring the mental health and trauma piece into this and how that affects people. So that's something that I would like to work on with regard to the environment. I also would like to dig in and really look at the opioid crisis. Last year, there was significant federal funding to the states. On average, 30% of the funding went unspent and was sent back to the feds. And that's largely because the states don't know what to do. And our federal agencies are scaling back their technical assistance to the states. So we need to have smart policymakers in Annapolis who know how to be the stopgap, how to address these issues much more holistically, and how to bring the right technical assistance into the state to make a difference and lessen the overdose deaths by opioids.
So tell me about how you're going to combat bullying, because that's a huge problem. That's a nationwide problem. And everyone is trying to find new and better ways to combat bullying, including the First Lady. So how are you personally going to do that, or how have you done that?
So I've been working on bullying prevention for a few years now, really digging into the research and looking at what actually improves bullying and connectedness among students. And in my day job, I actually work with 16 different states that have chosen bullying as a performance measure of their block grants. So they need to measure how far they're moving the needle on prevention. And the way we do that is, kind of measuring the number of reported incidents of bullying, but also how we're improving school climate. And the research all shows us, or all of the research shows us that social emotional learning, empathy building, promoting kindness among the student body, that's the best approach to preventing bullying. Because the more kids understand and feel connected to each other, the less likely they are to see or to experience a perceived difference that then could be the focus of a bullying incident. If we understand cultures better, religions better, just personal preferences better, but we understand each other as people, we're much less likely to hurt each other, and we're much more likely to be to shift from being a bystander to being an upstander, to standing up and intervening when we see something happen. So I've been working with both the Muslim and the Sikh communities because they have a much higher prevalence of bullying, religious-based bullying, and wanted to have a much deeper understanding of what the experience was like and then what really works on prevention. And so a national Sikh organization asked me to take a challenge to wear a turban for a day and to see the kind of reactions or comments I would get. And it was a really profound experience for me. I really started to see how just one symbolic representation, one article of clothing can really affect perceptions of the people around you, how they treat you, how they look at you. And so for me, that was another way that I could walk the walk to have a deeper understanding. And I also wrote a story in Huffington Post about both bullied for wearing a turban that kind of talks about that experience and what it's like for many youth who wear a turban to school and are picked on and bullied by their peers as a result. So I'm running for Maryland State Delegate in District 18. District 18 is a pretty big space. It runs all the way from the DC border, so Chevy Chase, part of Bethesda, up to Garrett Park, Kensington, part of Rockville, part of Silver Spring, and then all the way up to Wheaton.
Okay. And part of your platform or some of the issues that you address is the Me Too movement. How has that affected you?
So I would say the Me Too movement has really made me look at our candidates and parity in policy. Parity, when I say parity, I mean when you're looking at our body in Annapolis, the vast majority are still men. And I think we need more women in office. I just think that we've reached a time now where women, where the Me Too movement has really inspired women and empowered women to come forward and stand up and say that they're willing to take the challenge to be in positions of leadership, and we should. It's our time. So that really inspired me. But I will say, since I filed, there was also sort of another incident that really made me think about character and how women are treated as candidates. So after I filed, I was invited by a current seated delegate, Jeff Waldstreicher, to sit down and have a cup of coffee. And during the course of that conversation, he invited me to jump into the Senate race and leave the delegate race. And I kind of looked at him in a perplexed way, because why would I do that? I'm in the race that I want to be in, and there would be nothing in it for me. And so I said, well, why would I want to do that? And his response was, well, you would be doing me a favor. And to me, a man asking a woman basically to do something just because he's asking, because it would be doing him a favor, to be using his power and influence to try to presumably split the Senate vote to make it easier for him to win, I think it's really disrespectful. And it made me think about how I want to stand strong and not be silent in this election process. I think it's really important to call out when people are displaying a lack of character. And to me, that was demonstrative of a lack of character, but even more so when he lied on the record to Bethesda Beat. He lied on the record about it and said that my claim was born of actual malice. So this kind of legal posturing to silence me. And as an advocate and a survivor of violence, to do that publicly and to attempt to silence me made me feel even more empowered to speak out and to speak the truth and to stand strong.
President Trump has taken a huge stand against climate control. What are your feelings about that, and what are your what actions will you take in your role as delegate if you win?
So the Trump administration basically ignoring the science and saying that climate change doesn't exist is just ignorant. We need to look at the science. We know that with global warming that we have permafrost and ice melt at a rate that we really didn't even anticipate 10 years ago. So we know there's going to be sea level rise. Here in Maryland, we know this is going to affect our shoreline. Every year we're seeing a storm like we've never seen before. That's because of our climate change. It's because of global warming. Kids staying home for a windstorm this winter, that's never happened before, not in my lifetime. And so, I think we need to look at the science, look at the data, look at other countries. I call this leadership beyond legislation. It's not just about what we can do in policy. We need to be educating our communities. When we can recycle, we need to be recycling everything. Instead of taking a bottle of water off the shelf at the store, can we use filtered water and use reusable bottles? Because there's so much plastic. There's so much plastic waste. And even recycling that, the energy used to recycle has an impact on the environment.
So how has this informed your candidacy? So you experienced a trauma early on in your life, and now it's motivated you to move into public life.
But I would say, really what deepened that passion even more was an experience I had at age 24 when I survived a random attempted murder. And that kind of experience really shakes you to your core.
Was that on you?
I survived a random attempted murder. It was my mother and myself. Our car was pushed off the highway, and there were two perpetrators then that smashed through my window and proceeded to nearly beat me to death. So I even now have residual injuries. I have no feeling in the left side of my face as a result of the assault. There was a bite wound that then became a Forensic Files episode that's on YouTube now. But the forensic pathology of the bite wound that I sustained during the course of the crime became the Forensic Files episode. So it was an important piece of evidence, but really that experience gave me a much deeper understanding. When you're a victim of a violent crime and you agree to work with the criminal justice process as a victim witness, no one ever really tells you what a long-term commitment that is. And I can tell you I've had to go back to Florida 3 times. At one point, the sentence for one of the assailants was vacated on a technicality. I had to go back for a sentencing hearing that was 7 years after the assault. Even 2 years ago, I got a phone call from the Victim Identification Notification Program, the VINE program, that is an automated notification that one of the assailants, who's serving a life sentence for the crime, was moved to a different correctional facility, and there was going to be a hearing. I had no idea if it was about my crime, the crime that I was involved in, or not. So my own experience has really informed the lens through which I see life and the way that I view and review policy, really. At the federal level, I've been working for years now, decades, on advocating for different measures to be taken, new policies to be taken, new measures to consider that affect trauma survivors. And I really think that that's key to finding not only the right policy approaches that have meaningful impact for survivors, but also really promoting community wellness. And I'm very happy to share that earlier this year we passed a House resolution supporting trauma-informed care with unanimous bipartisan support in this administration. That's almost unheard of. Mm-hmm. But to have unanimous bipartisan support, that's an affirmation that we know and our congressional leaders know that this approach works, and it needs to be infused into many programs that connect with trauma survivors. Senate resolution passed just last week, so the companion piece is now in place, and we have all of our federal policymakers saying trauma-informed care. We're affirming this as a valid approach, a meaningful approach. It's one that works, and it's one that should be used in really looking at new policies that affect survivors of all kinds. So what I really learned through my own experiences is that there are gaps in our publicly funded programs and systems. And not only just gaps, but the way that we're doing things, we could be doing better. Sometimes we do even more harm than good. And that's part of why I'm running as a trauma-informed candidate. Trauma-informed care is a practice in human services that's evidence-based, and we know that it improves program outcomes significantly. It helps people heal in the aftermath of different traumas, whether it's violence, abuse, neglect, disaster, terrorism, war, or even poverty. When you have a trauma in your life and you have to work through the healing process, it helps if somebody says what happened to you, and not so much if they say what's wrong with you.
So you have a low carbon campaign. Tell us, what does that mean, and what are you doing with this?
Right, so after I filed to run for Maryland State Delegate, I took an environmental questionnaire. It was Sierra Club and League of Conservation Voters put together a questionnaire that was pretty rigorous, and I spent about 20 hours doing research. And what I learned was really significant. It's actually changed the way we live in my home, but it also made me feel that if I care so deeply about the environment and I know how much our carbon emissions are affecting our climate, then I need to walk the walk, and I want to be that kind of candidate. So I decided to do a low-carb, low-carbon campaign. This is my business card. It's a 2x2, half the carbon footprint of a regular business card. In this way, I hope that less is more. That this makes a statement, and it's not just the business card and doing things primarily through electronic outreach, but I made a commitment early in my campaign that I would not do yard signs because they're not biodegradable or recyclable. That's a permanent carbon footprint, and in District 18, where I'm running, with about 70 people on the ballot for the midterm primary, that's a lot of promotional material and a lot of yard signs. And I want to be the candidate that does more with less by making a statement that going low carb is really important. So I've been working with First Lady Walker of Wisconsin for about 2 years now. Primarily our work is focused on adverse childhood experiences, child trauma, and trauma-informed care. She has taken this on as her platform issue, and First Lady Walker is a Republican, and she's aware that I'm a Democrat, and we've decided to put people before partisanship. We've left our party affiliations at the door and have decided to team up and really work together to try to pass these resolutions, which we were able to accomplish. Thankfully, it was a huge step forward for the trauma-informed care movement. And we continue to look for ways to advance trauma-informed care on a national scale. And I think, it's just been a fantastic experience. She's a woman with a lot of passion for this work, absolutely committed to trauma-informed care, and she's done a lot for survivors all over the country.
So you're placing wish bowls out in the community where you're canvassing. Why are you doing this, and what have you learned along the way?
So wish bowls are, I pick them up at thrift shops. They're basically just repurposed bowls that I'm working with middle schoolers. They paint on the bowls, heart your community, leave a stone to let go of a problem, take a stone to make a wish. And we did a sort of a pilot test with the first wish bowl in November that went out on Rock Creek Park in District 18. And it's really become kind of a community barometer. So after Thanksgiving, for instance, the bowl was overflowing. People had to let go a lot. So there are other times that I pass the wish bowl and it's nearly empty. So people are making wishes, And the intention behind this, I don't have my campaign logo on it because that's not what this is about. This is about building community connections and starting community conversations. And I see people convening around the wish bowl, talking about it, what it means to them, and how much it's used. So I decided that I would incorporate this into my campaign because I'm out every weekend knocking on doors throughout the district. Every time I go out and knock on doors, I leave a wish bowl at a park in that part of District 18. And even on Monday, I was in Chevy Chase, left 2 wish bowls. Actually, I put 1 wish bowl out at Leland Park, and a member of the community approached me and asked me what it was about, and she said, would you mind, 2 blocks down on Elm is another park, would you mind putting a wish bowl out there as well? Because there's a lot more foot traffic there, and I think our community could use this. And, it starts dialogue, and I think that's really the intention here, is just to have a little something that is repurposed, created by middle schoolers, and then brought out into the community just with the good intention of getting people to talk.